I'm a university student and live in a rental house with 5 other people. It is far from ideal, but in this housing outcry that we're living in, it takes that sting off of us having to pay a bunch of money a month to exist in a box. This has relevancy, I swear. I got extremely lucky last weekend when 5 of the roommates I had were all gone for the weekend. This has never happened, so I classically have the house to myself. I did the whole 21-year-old girl home alone stuff you can think of. Watching movies with the volume out loud, taking long ass showers, walking around the house without a bra, etc. It was around 10 p.m. I had finished some homework and was relaxing with a glass of wine and watching some streaming services. It sounded briefly like there was something moving on the porch. We had a fox in our yard before, and the thing used to make a lot of noises in our porch, so I assumed that had been the case. After hearing some fumbling the second time, I went over to check through the window. There was nothing there. As I'm turning to head back to the living room, a piece of cement flies through our kitchen window. I think I peed myself a little bit when it happened, but I definitely screamed like a little girl. My moronic ass started unlocking the door to go outside, but common sense seized control of me again, and I locked the door back. I also ran to the back of the door to make sure if it was still locked, even though it's glass and wouldn't make a difference. Oddly enough, at this time, my grandma's words came into my head about something her own mother had told her. If someone tries breaking into your house, turn off the lights. You know the inside of your house better than they do. I shut off the lights in the living room and managed to turn off the TV, which was hard because my hands were shaking. My dad used to give me and my siblings advice on protection measures, which were not resonating at this time. I secured myself in my upstairs bedroom and turned all of the lights out of the house as I passed them. While walking up the stairs, I could hear the doorknob shaking furiously from the front door. Don't know if there was one person or if they realized they couldn't jump the fence to get in the backyard. While calling for emergency services on speaker, I secured my hunting knife to the end of my hockey stick with hot pink duct tape. If I was going to have to use it, at least it would look fabulous. I stayed in the dark holding my makeshift spear for what was probably like about 15 minutes. I'm really glad I wasn't being murdered in that amount of time. The operator told me police were coming, which they eventually did. It took a very unsettling amount of time. The only reason I left the bedroom in the first place was because I heard knocking on the door downstairs and the police lights were flashing through the window. Otherwise, someone would have had to come in and physically pull me out of the room. Statement was given, but that's all they did. Literally all they did. Nothing else. Literally that. A nice female officer stayed with me in the house and helped me clean up the glass until my brother showed up to bring me to his place for the rest of the weekend. It all started over a year ago, living in my current small neighborhood. It was unusually hot in our house for October, and my sister figured out to be a good idea to keep her window open for a bit of air. She was doing her homework and I was getting ready for bed when suddenly she burst into my room. She frantically says that she had heard some noises outside, sounds of leaves crunching under a person's steps. I believe it to be an animal, so I walked into her room and stayed there for not more than 5 minutes until I heard leaves crunching. We quickly glanced out of the window, only to hear the sound of something running away in the woods, but that wouldn't be the end of the story. During the winter, I enjoy exploring the woods, towards the back of my house, climbing trees and traveling further back into the fields. I remember the events very clearly. It had just snowed that night, first snowfall of the winter, and I was more than excited to head out there. I did so and climbed my usual tree to look out. I gave a curiously glance around me and at the ground when I noticed something strange. footsteps leading away from my house. This wouldn't be weird as long as the front of the footsteps didn't point straight at my house, and the origin of them came from a seemingly long-off start. I tracked them down, up to a point where there was a rusty wired fence covered in snow, where they disappeared. October 2017, it started up again. I was laying in my bed pitch dark, not a light shining through my room, when I heard it, my doorknob turning and my door creaking open. My heart stopped, every single possibility of what it was rushing through my mind. Since I was covered by my blanket, I quickly shot my sister a text. "Did you just came to my room?" She replied with a sharp no. "I'm all the way in Hillhart." My heart began to pump fast. I slowly snuck my head under my pillow and grabbed my Balaton, sent a text to my dad, and waited. My dad came in mere minutes, later with a knife, shut on the lights, and I jumped out of bed. Searched the entire house with nothing, alarm set, and all doors locked. Impossible. There's no way that happened. Otherwise, my dad and my mom were asleep, and a cat would have opened it as much faster if it jumped at the doorknob. You best believe I didn't sleep a second that night. Fast forward to December, my relatives in town stayed for a week in the basement. We turned on the alarm, and we all headed to sleep. I stayed up gaming. In the morning, around 2:30 to 3, my uncle slowly opened his eyes, with a feeling of being watched. His eyes adjusted a bit to the dark before he saw it. A guy, average height, scrutiny hair flowing in the wind, and shivering, looking inside the room through the window. My uncle screamed, and they grabbed the baby before taking off upstairs. That morning, I was informed what happened. I looked for footprints and saw the smallest sign of a footprint, a front toe print made by what I could only assume was a sneaker. My uncle gave me more details without me telling him. I looked for footprints, and he said that the guy was leaning on the left, looking in. The footprint matched his story. The left had a thin line of dirt anyone could have skimmed across. Now that leads to tonight. The night I could swear he or whatever it was had been in our house. I couldn't sleep. Life has been stressful lately, and I was pretty much all night until I tried getting rest. Every night, I have string Christmas lights dimly light the room until tonight. I figured the lights must have been interfering with my sleep, so I'd unplugged them and headed off to sleep. Pillow over my head and started to drift off until it happened. A quick strum of my guitar and the sound of something falling off, with a desperate attempt to stop it from hitting the ground, filled the room. This sound ignited my heart rate. Saliva developing at an extreme speed made it hard to not swallow. I could feel the presence of someone in my room. Realizing I left my baton on my desk, I did the next logical thing. I pretended I was asleep. I tried and laid there for what felt like hours, when in reality, it was only a few minutes, until I heard a whimper come from my sister's room. Imagining this may be the day everyone in my family was silently murdered but me, I gathered all the courage I had. I grabbed my phone, turned on the flashlight, and grabbed my baton. I busted into my sister's room and screamed, "Hey!" only to see that they were unharmed. My sister asked what the hell I was doing, and I just stood there, looked into the pitch black of my room, and cried. I have never in my life felt the overwhelming emotion believing my family was going to be taken from me until today. I sat there in my chair writing this in hopes of documenting my experiences and tried to come to a logical conclusion. All I can come up with is that there was some guy stalking my family and perhaps sneaking into our rooms at night. So this happened about a year ago, when I was a senior in college. It was a football game day, and after the game ended I went to a bar with my friends for a couple of drinks, and then decided to go home. I was in bed asleep by 10:30, because it's been a long day. Around 4:30 a.m. I woke up to a dark figure laying in bed with me, leaning over me. I was so disoriented that all I managed to mutter was, "What are you doing?" And the guy quickly jumped over me and ran out my door, down the stairs, and out the front door. I was in shock and so confused as to what had just happened. I lived with 3 other girls. 2 of them had friends in town and just happened to lock their doors at night, and the other wasn't there. So what's really scary is that this man walked all around our house and even came all the way upstairs to find my room. We called the cops, and they came to take over our statements. Then they told us that our neighbor called them 30 minutes before us and reported that she had woke up to a dark figure standing in her doorway. We were all so freaked out that 5 of us slept in one queen bed for the rest of the night after that. To this day, I'm still terrified to be home alone. They never found the guy, but I hope I never see him again.